What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about a question that I get a lot. Why do you recommend old flagships so much? If you guys are new to the channel, I pretty much focus on older flagship phones. Look at the price to spec ratio, see how the phones are performing years and years later. That's sort of what I modeled this channel around and the community around. So I do get that question a lot. Now I do from time to time bring on new phones. We brought on like the iPhone 14 Pro, the Galaxy S22 Ultra. I do bring on new phones, and I bring on mid-range phones as well. Pixel 6a, the Galaxy A52 5G is a phone I actually really like, but I typically recommend these older flagship phones like the S21 Ultra, one of my favorite older flagship phones to recommend to people. So I want to get into the logic behind this and why I think these old flagship phones are better. Even if you go the iPhone route, look at my iPhone comparisons to the 14 Pro. I do it every year. I compare the old phones to the new phone, and you guys will be surprised at how much value these older flagship phones have. So let's go ahead and get started here. So let's talk about the prices, because that's one of the first things. The prices on these older flagship phones, they actually come down quite a bit, a year after their release. So let's say, for instance, a Galaxy A53, which I think is one of Samsung's worst releases. It is a worse chip than the A52 5G. I didn't even bother picking it up this year. So, but that's typically around $400, right? So let's look at an S21 Ultra. It's not even close. It's just much better phone. Again, around the same price, $444. Probably you can find it a little bit cheaper on eBay. Let's look at another older flagship phone, one of my favorites, Galaxy Note 10 Plus. You can see around $300. Another really popular one that I like to recommend, LG V60, right? LG V60, $164. So you can find these older flagship phones really cheap in comparison to like the latest, and I think these are better than the latest. So what's a really popular one that everyone really likes? Let's say the Nothing phone, right? That's a phone that's really popular, mid-ranger, and these phones are typically going for like $500, right? The Nothing phone. These older flagship phones are so much better. Now they do have like one con, and it depends on how old the phone is, but we'll get into that later. But definitely the price to spec ratio is just so much better on these phones. You can get them for the same price as a mid-range phone. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the screens. So that is a big thing here, is that screens on these older flagships, again, for the same price, are better. So the S21 Ultra will have a 1440p display, typically a much higher PPI. Usually a typical mid-range phone will have a 1080p display, so you can watch content on the S21 Ultra in 2K or 1440p. You can only watch on 1080p, and typically these screens are brighter. They have thinner bezels, as you can tell too. Most mid-range phones will have a little bit of chunky bezels. It just overall looks better when you're watching content, whether it's YouTube videos, playing games, or whatever on your phone. You're just going to have a much better screen, and it's going to look more premium as well too. So that's definitely one of the pros that I really like about these older flagship phones. Even a Galaxy Note 10, it still has a really beautiful screen on here, even for an older flagship phone. Even when you compare it to a phone that came out that was newer, A53, or even the new Pixel 6a, which is about roughly the same price as a Note 10 Plus. You can see just much better screen. So the screen to bezel ratio is going to be better, and the resolution is typically going to be better on an older flagship phone. So next is going to be gaming performance. This is a big deal because the S21 Ultra has a Snapdragon AAA processor, and a typical mid-range phone is going to have a lower tier processor basically. So just to show you, this is the score that you would get. It's a big difference with the single and multi-core score, and when it comes to gaming performance as well. S21 Ultra, the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, even an iPhone, like an iPhone 11, 11 Pro, will be able to play PUBG at higher settings, more consistent frame rates, Call of Duty, Fortnite, whatever you throw at it, it will be able to play those games consistently at better frame rates. So I always, and that's probably my biggest thing with older flagship phones, is people coming to me saying, I want a game on my phone. guys, it's so much better if you go with an older flagship phone than a mid-range phone, because you just get the more powerful chip, especially if that's what you want to do, gaming. And overall, I would say performance in the long term is still going to be much better. So I would say 3 years down the line, right, the Galaxy S21 Ultra will still run just as fast as it is now. And I would say probably 3 years down the line, you will probably see the a phone like the A52 or the A53, right? These phones will probably still run pretty good, but I would guarantee that they will start to slow down. Gaming performance, they just won't perform anywhere near as good. So I would recommend that, highly recommend. If you're a gamer, you always want to get an older flagship phone over a mid-range phone because it's just overall better. And that goes for budget phones too. It's been a while since I bought a budget phone because there's just no point. Because people come to me, they want to spend $200. I'm saying you can spend $200 and get an LG V60, right? And then boom, you have your gaming and you have a ton of more stuff that you could do on your phone as well too. So a lot of people get fooled by that. I don't know if it's like a marketing thing. If a phone is like a year or two old, people think it's useless, and that's definitely not the case. I also want to talk about features. So with older flagship phones like a Galaxy Note 10 Plus, this phone being $300 still has all of the same features that you would find in a new phone like S22 Ultra, right? It has the S Pen. It also has basically all the software features, Samsung desktop support, reverse wireless charging. Most flagship phones have stereo speakers as well too. They typically don't lack anything. So even a phone like the Galaxy Note 10 Plus still has everything that you would find in a new phone. And let's say, for instance, typically mid-range phones don't have the same software features. So on the A52, you do not have Samsung desktop support, is not on here. Now you do have secure folders, NFC and stuff like that. But all those little things like Samsung desktop support, which I think is extremely useful, and typically they're not going to have reverse wireless charging. And a lot of mid-range phones don't have wireless charging as well too. Those are all features that you get on a older flagship phone as well too. So again, same price, but we're getting way more for our money when it comes to the additional features. All right, so next I want to talk about the cameras. This is also like a pretty gigantic thing. This is why I love recommending the S21 Ultra. It takes just basically the same photos as the S22 Ultra. Now the S22 Ultra I think does a little bit better job with the zoom shots, but it's like barely noticeable if you want to keep it all the way real. The S21 Ultra has a 108 megapixel sensor. It has 100 times zoom. It takes incredible photos at 30 times, 10 times zoom. One of the best camera systems, and you're getting it for like $400. It's not even comparable to a A53, a Pixel phone, a nothing phone. Those phones are not comparable when it comes to the photos that this phone produces and other older flagship phones. It's just not even a competition when it comes to image quality with this phone versus other phones. Just the software, the zoom features, it's just so much better, guys. So again, if you're somebody that is really worried about pictures and stuff like that, man, you could get an awesome camera phone for very little money, and you'll be perfectly happy with the shots that this phone takes. And like I said, I think it personally beats pretty much like most mid-range phones. Phones like the S21 Ultra, even the Note 20 Ultra, I think still has a great camera system as well too. So a phone from a year, 2 years ago still blows away, any mid-range phone right now, in my opinion. Unless it's a Pixel. I do like the Pixel 6a, the shots that come out of the Pixel 6a. It's actually very impressive. That's why I really like this phone. I'll do a follow-up video on it. The image processor is just really good on Pixel phones, honestly. But typically, phones like the Nothing phone, Galaxy A50 series phones, those phones, you would just be better off getting this camera system. Is just going to be much better. Let's go ahead and talk about software, because it's a good and a bad thing with these older flagship phones. So typically older flagship phones I think are updated still really well. Samsung does a great job with updating their older flagship phones, but the thing is, like a phone like the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, it's it got its last update, right? So it gets 3 years of majorOS updates. This will get around, I think, around 2 years of security patches as well too. So basically, that's like the only downside with an older flagship phone versus like a new, mid-range phone that comes out. But is it really a downside? Honestly, because it's still getting security patches and it's still going to perform. Like the pros outweigh the cons there. And if you're a phone like the Galaxy S21 Ultra, this phone has so much. It's getting an extra year of software updates and 5 years of security patches. So it gets the same treatment as an S22 Ultra, which is really sweet. So this phone will have an extremely long lifespan. So if you're worried about software, like I said, this is why I recommend this phone a lot, because it's going to have a very long lifespan. It gets a ton of security patches and also an extra year of majorOS update. Like I said, guys, I think it's just an overall better deal. Like, I want to hear you guys' comments down below. I think some of the things mid-range phones do is that some of those phones have really good battery life as well too. Like some of the Xiaomi phones that I've had, they have like crazy charging speeds and really big batteries. Battery life sometimes lasts a little bit longer because it doesn't have such massive displays and they're not super bright and all that stuff. But honestly, guys, I think the mid-range phone game is just not as good as getting an older flagship phone. I really couldn't justify it, honestly. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.